these large injections of outside capital with MFIs. It also requires an annual distribution of this that we were talking about earlier, the dividend and our savings. So we get our savings and our dividend back every year, the interest that are paid on the savings. Okay, so thank you guys for your time. I feel like we might have run over by about a few minutes. But if you have any questions, comments, if you have to run out to dinner or anything, please feel free. But thank you so much for your time, and I'm free to talk individually or with questions. Does anybody need to run out because we get back?
I just want to know what was the biggest difference between the VSLA and MFI.
Okay, so MFIs, most MFIs function by credit, right? So they give credit out. Whereas the VSLA functions with savings.
Yeah. Okay.
So that is kind of that is the main difference.
Is there a resultant scale difference in what the MFIs are able to finance versus what
I mean, it's a very big difference in terms of what they're able to finance because you're talking about local savings versus international funds. But I think the difference mainly is where they can work. So and their clientele. So MFI has to have a certain level of certain amount because it costs me just as much to take out or to process a $100 loan as it does to process a $10,000 loan. So they have their range of prices where they have to function, and VSLAs basically function underneath that in terms of savings, in terms of number, loan amounts.
Yeah, just in terms of ability to scale. So the VSLAs, like the group that you work with, where do you all get your funding? Is it primarily from outside sources? Because you aren't getting any sort of feedback like you might get from a microfinance group.
Right.
So how quickly will you all be able to scale? How sustainable are you as an NGO?
Right. Well, ours is actually a for-profit organization. So, for example, I just worked with the Colombian government. So the Colombian government calls our organization and says, you know what, we're interested in, we have some funds, we're interested in implementing this methodology with you all. So in terms of scaling, I don't think it's as easily scalable as, like you were saying, as some of these other methodologies. In terms of the pure for-profit based methodology, it's a lot easier to scale. But I mean, when you're talking about 2.2 million, it's definitely had some interest from some NGOs, so I think it's a...
So wait, who pays your organization?
Excuse me?
Who pays your organization?
Who pays?
Yeah, set these things up.
So, right, so say for example, we just worked with the government of Colombia, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, so the different foundations, it's basically either government or foundation run, or NGO run, Plan, Care, CRS, Catholic Relief Services.
And do you have any figures in terms of like how big a niche you feel you could fill? Like you're at 2 million now. What do you see? 200 million? 2 billion? Like how many people do you think would really benefit from your services as opposed to like microfinance as a methodology, or something else?
Right. Well, I guess what I would tell you is that I do. I have no idea in terms of those numbers.
Okay.
No, but I don't know that I could say, yeah, we've actually done some studies on that, and we got some studies on it. No, you know, it's been to this point such a huge market that it's been more driven by who wants to invest in the methodology as opposed to the demand, which is, you know, and it's kind of worked backwards to the way that you would like it to work, because you would want it demand-driven as opposed to supply-driven, but it's been that way thus far. So it would be nice to do those type of studies. I'll have to note that now.
Can you give a little history on this? Like who that how long has been around?
Okay.
Like
sure.
Just like how, like I know there's been a fair amount of debate and controversy between the microfinance model or the community-based microfinance model. So just like any history on like how it evolved, what came about, how long it's been around.
Right. Well, the beauty of this, VSLAs themselves, the name is basically given to this body of savings methodologies that people themselves have already come up with. So when I talk about these informal groups, Well, basically what has happened is there are these informal groups that function all over the world. So there's nothing really new about a VSLA. The VSLA part, the name basically, has been a compilation of all of these different experiences from around the globe. So saying this is what these folks do, this is what these folks do, let's take the best practices and put them together as a VSLA. And that was basically done by the owner of the company that I work for, along with some other NGOs in the field. And they said this is what we want it to look like. We want a savings-driven methodology that's very simple to use, but at the same time can encourage people and doesn't cost very much. So they said, well, people are already doing this. Why don't we take some of this organically driven methodologies that are already in practice, or traditions, not even methodologies, and why don't we build on those because it's something that people already know. So that's kind of how it's evolved. And my company's been around, been working in this for about the last 25 years.
And how do you see this balancing with microcredit? Like, do you feel like this is like something that should replace microcredit?
No.
Do you feel like they are two things that should coexist in
Right.
different cases? And
Yeah, I'll get to
There's
this.
the market segment.
No, I think that they can work together. I don't think they're mutually exclusive by any means. Because I think, one, they're different market segments. Number two, what I think is that it's the difference between, say, for example, a credit card and a savings account, which, they're not mutually exclusive by any means. You want to use both of them. And they function better with each other as opposed to, I don't think they necessarily compete.
I was actually going to ask you about that. If there's an area where there already is a VSLA, do you find that it's hard for them to survive as the industry becomes more commercialized and is growing in a more commercial, individual type loan basis?
Right. Very good question. I think what we saw in the pie chart was the 2% that MFIs and NGOs are covering at this moment. So there's a huge. I don't think we're competing for business by any means. And I think, again, it's just this idea that MFIs have a bottom number for their savings or for their loan amount. So they have a number they say we cannot go below that because it's just not profitable, or we can't be sustainable that way. So I think that's one way, but also is the idea that this is, if someone's paying you 10 or 3 or 5% a month to save on top of your savings, you're looking to save there. And it gives you a more of a flexibility than traditional microfinance. Traditional microfinance might offer you loan terms of 4 to 6, 12 months, but it's very, very contained and constraining and organized, as opposed to this that's more of a spontaneous, if you need it, it's there, it's available in your community, you don't have to go anywhere in an emergency situation. So that's sort of the difference. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
What did you do specifically in the Peace Corps, and where did you work, and how, what did you do specifically?
Okay, let me hold that question because we got one more right now.
This could be a really simple answer.
Okay.
In the 25-year, history of the company, your experience since you've been working there, is it working?
Is it working?
Is it working? Yeah. Is it helping people? Have you found it to be incredibly successful? Has it
Right.
inspired you to spread this model?
Right.
Does it help?
No, that's a great question. I was actually just debating that question today.
Interesting.
I think that if you put it into a model and said, how much is this methodology helping people get out of poverty? I think it's a block in the right direction, like a stepping stone in the right direction. Is it single-handedly lifting people out of poverty? No.